Athletic Center at the University of Massachusetts, the first presidential debate. Here is moderator Jim Laird.
Good evening, I'm Jim Laird. Welcome to this, the first of 3 presidential debates between Texas Governor George W. Bush and Vice President Al Gore. Now let's meet the candidates. Before we begin, I have been asked by the Bush campaign to announce that for the next 3 hours only, viewers in the states of Michigan, Missouri, and Pennsylvania have the option of free pay-per-view, courtesy of the Republican National Committee. On Channel 62, The Perfect Storm, with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg. The film Mike Clark of USA Today called The Perfect Movie. On Channel 63, the grandeur, beauty, and savagery of ancient Rome came to life in Gladiator with Russell Crowe. Gladiator, a hero will rise. Care for something just a bit naughty? On Channel 64, 10 penthouse pets join forces with 10 Playboy playmates to find the perfect hustler centerfold in Miss Killer Body 2000. Contains nudity. With that out of the way, let's begin the debate.
I specifically would like to know whether Governor Bush will support the Dingell-Norwood bill, which is the main one pending.
Governor Bush, you may answer that if you'd like, but also I'd like to know how you see the differences between the two of you, and we need to move on.
Well, the difference is that I can get it done. That I can get something positive done on behalf of the people. That's what the question in this campaign is about. It's not only what's your philosophy and what's your position on issues, but can you get things done? And I believe I can.
All right. What about the Dingell-Norwood bill?
Mr. Vice President, during this campaign, you have frequently called the Bush tax plan a risky scheme. Why?
Well, Jim, Governor Bush and I have 2 very different plans to offer tax relief to American families. In his plan, the wealthiest 1% of Americans would receive nearly 50% of the benefit. My plan, Jim, is different. Rather than squander the surplus on a risky tax cut for the wealthy, I would put it in what I call a lockbox.
Governor Bush, your response.
I don't know what that was all about. But I will tell you this. Don't mess with Texas.
I didn't mess with Texas.
Governor Bush, I listened very carefully to the Vice President's remarks, and I honestly do not believe he messed with Texas. Now, Governor Bush.
Jim, could I just add that in my plan, the lockbox would be used only for Social Security and Medicare. It would have 2 different locks.
Governor Bush.
Now, one of the keys to the lockbox would be kept by the president. The other key would be sealed in a small magnetic container and placed under the bumper of the Senate Majority Leader's car.
We welcome the 2 candidates, Governor Bush and Vice President Gore.
Jim, if I could just
quick,
respond.
and we need to move on. Yes, sir.
I know that.
Well, let me just say that obviously tonight we're going to hear some phony numbers.
If I could respond to that, Jim, under my plan, I will put Medicare in an ironclad lockbox.
Let me say something. Now, I understand.
Excuse me, Governor. Our 3.5 minutes is up, but we'll finish that.
Can I make one other point?
Wait a minute. That's just totally false. Wait a minute. It's just totally false for him to stand up here and say that. Let me make sure the seniors hear me loud and clear.
If I just briefly, Jim, I know.
In an environmentally friendly way.
Well, can I have the last word on this?
New question.
Of course.
Okay,
New
go ahead.
question.
If I could say
All
one
right,
other
we're way
thing about
over the
that.
3.5 minutes. Go ahead.
In a lockbox.
1 minute.
Man's practicing fuzzy math again.
Can I have a rebuttal here?
Sure, but I just want to see if he buys that.
No, let me just tell you what the facts are.
Let me call your attention
This
to it.
man's been disparaging my plan with all this Washington fuzzy math.
To move
It's
on,
an
30,
illusion.
Well, wait a minute.
30
wait a minute.
seconds, Governor. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all,
Can I comment on that?
You may.
I cannot let this go by.
If I could respond, Jim,
I can't let the man continue with fuzzy math.
in a lockbox.
Fuzzy math.
Could I
new
respond to that,
question.
Jim?
Do-
This is
we're
a big
almost-
issue. This is a big issue. Could we do another round on it? Lockbox.
Fuzzy math.
Lockbox.
Fuzzy math.
Lockbox.
Fuzzy math.
Lockbox.
Fuzzy math.
Could we do another round on it?
Fuzzy
Box.
Fuzzy
Box.
Fuzzy
Box.
Fuzzy
Box. Could we do another round on it?
We have to stop here.
Governor Bush, the next question is for you. 2 weeks ago, at a meeting of the Economic Club of Detroit, you said the following, quote, "More seldom than not, the movies gives us exquisite sex and wholesome violence that underscores our values. Every two-child did. I will." End quote. What did you mean by that?
Pass.
Perhaps if you could see it on a monitor.
Pass.
Really? No idea what that could mean?
Could it be education?
Jim, I believe that what my opponent intended to say was that all too often the explicit sex and wholesale violence in films undermines our values.
Bingo. That was it.
I happen to agree with Governor Bush on that, and I commend him for it. But let me add something. In my plan, the lockbox would also be camouflaged. Now, to all outward appearances, it would be a leather-bound edition of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. But it wouldn't be. It would be the lockbox.
Governor Bush, this question is for you, and it concerns foreign policy. Last week, in Serbian elections, we saw the apparent defeat of President Slobodan Milosevic by challenger Vojislav Kostunica, yet Milosevic refused to step aside. As president, would you apply pressure on Milosevic and openly aid Kostunica and his Novija Srpskaya party, or by working with neighbors such as Karadan Dragaljevic of Croatia, Istvan Pojonyi of Hungary, or Antipas Lageros of Greece?
First of all, I think that any instability in that first country you mentioned is troubling. And clearly the second guy you spoke of beat the first guy. Personally, I favor seeking the diplomatic help of the person I call guy number 3. But I'm not going to pronounce any of their names tonight because I don't believe that's in our national interest.
Vice President Gore.
Jim, let me here tonight issue a warning to the enemies or potential enemies of the United States. You may think you know the location of the lockbox. And maybe you do. Or maybe that's a decoy or a dummy lockbox. Only the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, myself, and Tipper will know for sure.
Which brings us to our final question. Governor Bush, both you and the Vice President have offered plans to provide prescription drugs for the elderly. What makes your plan superior?
Jim, I'd like to interrupt here and answer that question as if it were my turn to speak. Jim, let me tell you about a friend of mine. Her name is Etta Munson. She's 94. She's a widow living on Social Security in Sparta, Tennessee. Etta was born with only one kidney. She also suffers from polio, spinal meningitis, lung, liver, and pancreatic cancer, an enlarged heart, diabetes, and a rare form of cystic acne. Now, several recent strokes, along with an unfortunate shark attack, have left her paralyzed and missing her right leg under the knee. Just last week, she awoke from a coma to find that due to a hospital mix-up, her left arm had been amputated, infected with syphilis, and then reattached.
Mr. Vice President, we are short of time.
As you can imagine, Jim, Etta's prescription drug bills are staggering. They run to nearly $113 million a day. And she tells me that some weeks she has to choose between eating or treating her Lyme disease. Now, under my plan, Etta's prescription drugs would be covered. Under my opponent's plan, her house would be burned to the ground. And that is wrong. That is just wrong.
Governor Bush, response?
I believe that some of his figures may be inaccurate.
Jim, what you just heard from my opponent is an attack on my integrity and my character. But I will not reply in kind. Instead, I will take those remarks and put them away in a tiny lockbox where all bad thoughts go.
Well, that brings us to the close of tonight's debate. Each candidate will now give a brief closing statement.
Jim, could I make 2 closing statements?
I'm afraid not. In fact, we are almost out of time, so I will instead ask each candidate to sum up in a single word the best argument for his candidacy. Governor Bush?
Strategery.
Vice President Gore?
Lockbox.
Thank you, and good night.
Could you go into detail about what those perils are?
Well, the biggest peril about being an incumbent is taking a big poll number for granted. And I want the people of Texas to know I take no votes for granted. I intend to campaign harder than I did in 1994. I'll be well-financed, well-organized, with a positive message.
Governor, what does your father think about your possibly running for president?
He knows what I know, that I better get reelected governor of Texas. That's where my head and my heart is, and he'll be out there helping me as much as I ask him to do.